This is Food for Thought with Deborah Walker. On today's Food for Thought, it's an incredible privilege to welcome John Demartini. And where do I start with John's resume? Well, he is considered the world's leading authority on human behaviour. He's a leadership development specialist, a best-selling author who's written over 40 books, an international speaker, and jet setter from what I can work out with his 360 days travel in a year, a global educator and founder of the Demartini Institute. Thank you for joining us today on Food for Thought, John.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, today we're going to talk about the healing power of gratitude, and there is research that now proves what you've been teaching for many years, that gratitude is healing. Many scientific studies, including research by renowned psychologists, have found that people who consciously focus on gratitude experience greater emotional well-being and physical health than those who don't. Explain from your years of learning why this is the case.
Well, I think that gratitude is the key that opens up the gateway of the heart. And inside the heart, besides blood, there's also love. And I really believe that love window washes the mind and brings inspiration to the mind and enthusiasm to the body. And I think it brings order to chaos and helps us see the balance inherent in life that we sometimes overlook with our emotional baggage. And I always say that whenever you have a imbalanced perspective, it's hard to have a balanced body. And a balanced body is healing, and an imbalanced one is what we call disorder. So gratitude is it's a sign that you have a balanced mind. It's a sign that you are poised and present and purposeful and patient and productive and powerful. So gratitude is the key. I was born on Thanksgiving Day in America, and my mom told me before I went to bed when I was about 4, make sure you count your blessings each day, because if you are grateful for what you get more to be grateful for. And I think that that's the center part of the healing method.
Do you think she was key to the journey you've taken?
I think that my mom was a Christian Scientist, so she understood the significance of gratitude and healing, and saw it obviously working with other people, and saw how important it was, and knew that a life without it is a life that's sort of meaningless.
It's really interesting for me in regards to a mother's love and how it's influenced you.
Well, it's interesting. I've asked thousands of people if they had only 24 hours to live, what would they do with their life? And pretty consistently, they'll say, I'd go to the people who've contributed to my life and say, thank you, I love you. So I think that's they go together.
Well, let me pick up on that, because I love that question, and you talk about that in the book. And also, I love the question that you ask your interviewees, or the interviewee when one of your managers, when you were first looking for recruitment of someone else to work alongside you, that if you had $1 million, what would you be doing? And I thought it was actually a brilliant question. I worked in recruitment years ago, and I thought it was genius, in honesty, for getting to the bottom of whether someone should work with you or not. But what you found was that so many people are not living in the way that they want to. So why are so many living in a way that isn't serving them?
Well, everybody, consciously or unconsciously, lives by a set of priorities, a set of values, things that are most important to least important in their life. And whenever they're setting goals and intentions or doing actions that are aligned and congruent with their highest values, they feel fulfilled, and they have a higher probability of having gratitude in their life. But whenever they're living by lower values on the list, or attempting to anyway, they feel that they're unfulfilled because they're not fulfilling what's meaningful to them. And that primarily occurs after we've compared ourselves to other people and put ourselves down relative to other people we put up on pedestals. So the second we get around somebody we think is smarter, more successful, has more wealth, has a greater relationship, more social influence, better health or better looking, more spiritually aware, the second we compare ourselves to them and put them on pedestals and put ourselves in a pit, we'll inject the values of them into our life and the social idealisms and expectations from others instead of setting goals that are really aligned and congruent with us. And anytime we try to set a goal that's not us, we beat ourselves up. And the beating ourselves up is not a bad thing. It's a feedback to let us know we're not being authentic. And when we're not authentic, we don't have gratitude. But when we set goals that are really meaningful and true to us, we spontaneously have the appreciation and gratitude for life because we see things on the way, not in the way.
And I think our society is very focused, particularly in business now, on performance management of people and setting goals. And most obviously those people are out of alignment because of the stress levels it's causing.
Well, when nobody goes to work for the sake of a job. They go to work to fulfill their values. And if they can't see how the job description that they're doing every day is helping them fulfill their values, and they can't see how the vision of the company is fulfilling their values, they're unfulfilled. And so what they do is they're looking at the clock and taking breaks as much as they can and drinking coffee and stimulant and tea and everything else to try to keep awake because they're uninspired by work. But if they're inspired and they're engaged and they can see how what they're doing in their work is meaningful and it helps them fulfill their highest values, they don't want to take a break. They want to keep doing productive things. And so this is the difference. And productivity and profitability of a company has a lot to do with how engaged people are. So if we can help them by hiring them and inspiring them according to their values, there's a more fulfilled life and a more productive economy.
But also, surely that comes down to the leadership of the company and the message that they're giving out in regards to their engagement with their people and how they actually drive that.
Well, if we have unengaged people, the leaders become autocrats because they're having to push people uphill all the time and they get frustrated. But if they learn how to hire people according to values and inspire people according to their values and respect people for their individual expression of their values, amazing things can get done. Mm-hmm. You know, a child who may love getting up and do the video games and work on video games all day long may be inspired by that, but not inspired by their classes or their responsibilities at home. So unless the mother goes in and communicates or the father communicates on the child's values and how the child will get what it wants by doing those things, it's going to fight all the time, and they'll be labeled attention deficit or defiant disordered all the time. So the same with employees. Employees are not inspired if they can't feel that they're fulfilling their values, and that's the key. And a quality manager and leader will understand that and master the art of communicating what the needs of the company are in terms of individual values.
Now, we're living in a society with high levels of obesity, stress, heart disease, cancer, record levels now than ever before. How do we use gratitude specifically to reduce and heal these, do you think?
Well, in our life, we typically go through life accumulating information that's incomplete. Now, what does that mean? Let's say we had somebody that challenged us as a child, and we never found out how it served us. We never found out how it was on the way. We end up holding on to emotional baggage on it. We never saw who was supporting us to balance it and why they had to play a pair of opposites. We never saw that, so we carried that on, and we just felt like we were victim by our history instead of masters of our destiny. And we end up accumulating things that we think shouldn't have happened instead of actually asking, how has this happened, and how has it benefited me, and how has it served me, and how is it helping me? And one of the greatest questions you can ever ask, I think on a daily basis, is how is whatever happening today helping me fulfill my mission? And if you can answer that and meaningfully answer that over and over again, you don't accumulate the baggage. You actually see things on the way, not in the way. And gratitude is spontaneous, and you bring healing and order in your life.
Do you think this is a reason why so many people have depression now? We're seeing such high levels of depression in society.
Well, I always call depression a comparison of our current reality to a fantasy and an unrealistic expectation that we keep being addicted to. If we can't appreciate life as it is and we keep comparing it to a fantasy how we think it should be, we're not going to appreciate our existence. So we have to make sure that what we're expecting from life is real. And a lot of times we have unrealistic expectations and fantasies that drive us. And so I always say that anytime you expect others to live outside their values or you expect yourself to live outside your own values, you're going to be depressed because you're not going to get those outcomes. Because every decision a person makes is based on what they feel is going to give them the greatest advantage or disadvantage to their values. So if they don't feel that if they're expecting themselves to live outside their values, I see this all the time when I ask people how many want to be financially independent. Everybody puts their hand up, and I said, how many of you are? All the people put their hands down mostly. And I said, well, you have an expectation to be financially independent, but you have a value system that wants to buy things for immediate gratification. You don't want to save long term to get your financial independence. You keep buying depreciables, not appreciables. And so unless they have the values to build wealth, it's not going to happen, and they'll keep beating themselves up thinking there's something wrong with them because they expect themselves to be somebody they're not. And depression, there's a lot of that. We keep expecting ourselves or others to be doing something that's not real. And so we end up pretty angry at life.
So values fundamentally are actually the underlying thing here.
Well, I think that our values dictate how we perceive the world, make decisions in the world, and act in the world. So our sensory cortex, motor cortex, and integrative cortex is designed by the value system. In fact, the brain is a highest value-seeking organ. It's trying to help you fulfill what's meaningful to you. And so you can't escape that. You really can't escape the value system when you're dealing with human behavior. That's the cornerstone and the foundation of every action that we do.
And this is about surely getting emotionally involved with actually, or energetically involved is more what I'm thinking of, in regards to having appreciation and the gratitude, rather than actually just saying it, isn't it?
Well, saying it is meaningless. I mean, just saying, oh, I'm grateful, is pretty well meaningless. If you can't stop and look at how something is happening and actually serving you. Yesterday I had a very interesting thing happen. I was very stressed and challenged by somebody that I was discussing with, and last night I was sitting there as I was going to bed thinking, okay, how'd that serve me? And I finally got it. It took me about 15 minutes to get all the benefits out of it. But once I do that, my mind was clear again. All the noise in the brain dissolves, and that's part of the healing process. So you got to ask yourself, how's whatever's happening serving you, or otherwise you accumulate baggage, and the baggage makes you have bags and makes you age.
I must remember that for my clients, and it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because so many people, lots of my clients will tell me how they struggle to sleep at night because their brain is on overtime. It's continually almost like a motor running, and in effect, that's probably one of the questions that they should be asking themselves.
Well, anything that you infatuate with, or anything that you resent, and anything you have above you or below you and don't have balanced, will automatically occupy space and time in your mind and run you. And that's all the brain noise. But once you actually bring it back into balance, your heart opens with gratitude and you feel love. When you do, you're freed. Your mind's freed automatically. And I think that the way the brain is set up, it's trying to get us there. And if we get there, we're freed and we heal. If we don't, we keep running emotional baggage and we keep running symptoms. You know, we have in our body a nervous system called the autonomic nervous system. And this is divided into what they call the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic is involved in fight or flight to anything that challenges our values, and the other one is rest and digest for anything that supports our values. So if we have an imbalanced perspective, more support than challenge, or more challenge than support in our perception of the world, our autonomics go to one side or the other and create symptoms to let us know it. And the second we bring balance and see both support and challenge equally, and which is what makes us grow most, we bring wellness. So if we can bring our mind by asking questions and bring it back into balance, we liberate ourselves from the emotional bondage and baggage, and we heal. And I have developed a method called the Demartini Method, designed to ask certain questions to help bring balance to the mind and liberate us from all that emotional baggage and that illness-generating stuff, and finally liberate us so we can say thank you and heal.
And epigenetics, the arena of epigenetics, is now proving what you're saying, which is in effect that actually the mind is incredibly powerful in health.
Well, the idea that we have what is called a diathesis, a proclivity from our genetic expression to have certain illnesses, does not mean that we actually necessarily have it. Our epigenetics is probably more significant than even the genetics, because they turn on and turn off genes, and whether they're expressed, and they're based on our perceptions of support or challenge. Because the sympathetic nervous system, when we're challenged, the epigenetics are emerged from the sympathetic side. And if not, when we're supported, we get the parasympathetic epigenetics. We're literally altering our gene expression according to our feelings and our emotions and beliefs.
And switching them on and off.
Exactly. We're turning them on and off.
And I actually don't really think that a lot of people realize that they're that much in control.
Well, we don't realize. I think it was Marianne Williamson when she in her book when she talked about we're so profound we don't realize how profound we are.
You're right. It's really interesting. And now I'm starting to think that the opening of the heart is part of the unveiling of our greatest potential in this world. From what you're saying.
Well, I think you said it perfectly, because when somebody is truly grateful and they see the hidden order. See, there's two types of gratitude I'd like to elaborate on. When somebody supports you, you can say, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And when somebody challenges you, you got another set of words you say. But when you actually see both of them synchronously at the same time, and you see the hidden order behind it, you have true gratitude. True gratitude is actually seeing the hidden order in the apparent chaos. True gratitude is when you can see the balance of support and challenge equally at the same time. True gratitude is the one that actually really opens the heart. And the other one just creates a dopamine rush that you think is love, but it's not. It's a dopamine infatuation. And many people get caught in that and confuse that with love and then get broken hearts because of it. The key is to be able to embrace both sides. I think it's just like in the marriage vow, you know, for rich or for poor, for health or disease, it's both sides that make up love.
And that challenge, let me just pick up on that challenge, because now I work with people who are chronically ill, some dying in some cases. And even I struggled over the weekend with several experiences of death of friends happening in one day, as well as a dog being hit by a car in front of us. Now, I found it hard to be grateful. I found it hard to actually really open my heart at that point. And I don't think I'm on my own having that struggle and that challenge with that. How do you count your blessings in these moments? How do you have gratitude for healing at that point?
Well, that's interesting you ask, and what I'm going to say probably sound a little challenging, but let's go through it methodically here. When you infatuate with somebody, that means you put them on a pedestal, and you assume that they have more similars and differences, more support than challenge, more positives and negatives, and you look up to them. And whenever you do, if they were to leave you, you feel distraught, you feel grief, you feel hurt, you feel fear, because you don't want to lose that what you infatuate with. But if you resent somebody and you see more differences and similarities, more negatives and positives, more pains and pleasures, and you put them down, then what happens is if they leave you, you celebrate. You have relief, not grief. So grief is a withdrawal symptom from those things that you infatuate with, and relief is a withdrawal symptom from those that you resent. And the relief is when somebody comes to you that it leaves you, that you resent, you have relief. And if somebody comes near you that you infatuate with, you have relief. So relief and grief are reciprocals of each other. But if you have a balanced orientation, a person is more adaptable and they don't attach to relief or grief. And that's the key. Because if we have more negatives and positives in our perception of ourselves, we can actually have a death wish. And if we have more positives and negatives in our perception of ourselves, we can have a life wish. So we can actually have a thought that, God, I don't want to live another day like this. Or I don't want to ever die. I love my life. So both of those states occur, and they are, if we ask the right question, we can change that state and balance it. So if I have somebody that all of a sudden you're having grief and somebody's lost in their life, I immediately ask them, all right, so while they were here, what were the downsides? And now that they're gone, what are the upsides? And I help them try to balance it, or otherwise they'll stay in grief for months or years, and that'll run down their immune system and give them sickness. And the truth is, when somebody dies, I've never met anybody that really wants us grieving. If I asked you, if you were to die today, would you want everybody grieving around you? And you'd probably say, no, I want them to get on and live their life to the fullest. Well, so when we're grieving, we're not really doing what the people want. We're doing it because we're attached to the infatuated parts we had about them, and we're not honoring them as a whole.
Now, it is interesting because for me, I will take a really long health and case history, and you'll understand this being a chiropractor, and I map the health out, and I will see where traumas and stress and grief have made a big difference to the health at that point, and then had a knock-on effect.
Well, there's no doubt that if we look in the history of people with various types of illnesses, I'm just astonished. I've been interested in the mind-body connection for over 40 years, and I'm astonished at how that's still overlooked by many health professionals. Yeah. I just don't understand it. I can't see how they can miss it. It's so obvious. People have no... I had a lovely lady, I'll give an example. I had a lovely lady that I was working with in Minneapolis, and all of a sudden she found out that her husband was serving her papers for divorce, and he was going off with a younger woman. Well, when she heard that, she just was silent. She just went, even though intuitively she knew that there was a rocky road in that relationship, she wasn't expecting it, not that day. Well, within 4 days, she had a little cyst in her breast, and about 2 weeks later, they diagnosed that she had breast cancer. And I said, so what's the benefit of this? And she goes, benefit? There's cancer here. I said, yeah, I know, but what's the benefit? And she goes, we finally sat there, and it took her about an hour to finally start being open about it. I said, what's the benefit of this, the breast cancer? And she said, she started crying, and she said, my husband has difficulty leaving me now that I have breast cancer. And I said, do you think you found this as a strategy to get what you want? And she cried, and she says, do you think I would go to that extreme? And I said, what do you think? She cried. She says, it's the only thing that's worked. She didn't want him to leave, so that was, because then she knew it would be a guilt trip on him.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is when he decided not to leave, it mysteriously cleared.
Food for thought, indeed.
So when I watch these things, I watch it. We know that we have surveilling natural killer cells and surveillance cells that go around and clean up cancer cells as they emerge and submerge. They come and they go through our life. And if we go in certain emotions, we can turn it on and turn it off. So to somehow ignore that and see that somehow cancer is not related to emotions, I think is absolutely insane.
Now, what stops people from expressing their gratitude fully in this world, do you think?
Again, it's unrealistic expectations. Whenever I'm ungrateful, I've got unrealistic expectations. And whenever I'm grateful, it's usually because I'm seeing things as they are and appreciating them for what they are.
Now, in the book, you talk about following your heart and doing what you love. I'm in full agreement. I believe that those who are doing what they love rarely become ill, as we've just talked about, and always seem to have energy and vitality. But I see children now have little time to explore creativity and dreaming because their lives are almost fully planned out time-wise in both school and home. Then as students, they end up with enormous amounts of debt, effectively a millstone for many of them. How does anyone come out of that experience thinking, well, thank you, I'm going to follow my heart, as I've been told to do? Because that's okay if you're going into a job that's going to pay the bills and it's what you want to do. But I now believe that people are stressed partly because they're not able to do what they love.
Well, I've never believed that they're not able to. They haven't come up with a strategy on how to overcome their inertia, their difficulties with it. Because I've yet to find somebody that can't. I just found somebody that hasn't yet. So I started asking people, because I see people sometimes trapped in jobs they see as uninspiring. What I do is I make them list the job description of what they're doing. I help them determine their values. By the way, if you go on my website, you can get a free download on how to determine your values so you can know how to set goals that you'll do. And it's called value determination. And what happens if a person goes in there and determines their highest values, what's really important to them, what their life demonstrates, not what they think it should be, but what it actually is, and they basically ask, how is my job duty, my responsibility helping me fulfill that? If they can't see the relationship, they're going to be frustrated. They're going to hate their job. But if they make the link and ask, so how does this, and how can it, and how will it? And they make links, the more they link the relationship between what they're doing to their highest values, the more inspired they are at work. And then they start to love what their work is. I always say either go and do what you love and set a plan and master plan it and release it and delegate things and go do what you love, or love what you do. But if you're not doing what you love or loving what you do, you're missing out on life.
And also potentially making yourself ill.
Yeah, you're going to make yourself ill. Well, illness is a feedback to try to get us to live authentically. And if we don't live authentically, the illness is our friend trying to get us there. And if we understand its purpose and the meaning behind it, I just had breakfast with a lovely gentleman here in the UK named Kim Jobs, and he was involved in writing a magnificent article called Diseases of Meaning. And he basically was describing that every disease has a deeper meaning in there, and there's an unconscious strategy on trying to help us be authentic and brought back to balance. And if we learn how to let our diseases guide us, we'll turn them and heal them from within instead of having to use medications and all kind of outside sources. So what happens is we have a tremendous power. If we have the power to create disease, we have the power to transform disease.
Yes, and I've had a interesting transformation over the last few years where I've gone from not really believing any of this, but from my own casework with my clients, I see the same issues come up against the same diseases. And it's a fascinating study, I have to say.
Well, I've seen people, of almost every kind of imaginable condition over the years. I mean, all types, almost every organ. I see emotions associated with it. And I've seen and watched patterns and written them down and documented those patterns and looked for trends. Some trends are more clear and obvious than others, but without a doubt, there's stress underlying those conditions. Yeah. I sat with a gentleman who is most noted in the area, he's like another Hans Seye. His name was Albert Crum, and he wrote books back in the 1950s and 60s about stress and illness. And we had an incredible conversation at the Doctors Club, at the Harvard Club actually, in New York one night, talking about how emotions affect disease. and how the health profession doesn't want to address them because it takes time and they want a quick fix. So they've gone to medications instead of psychology, and because taking the time, they don't have time for that. They want a quick fix, a magic pill for every ill, as they say.
Yes, and I truly believe it's what you eat, drink, and think.
Well, I think that's a good summary, because what you put into your mouth and what comes out of your mouth are big parts of it.
It's been a great pleasure to have you on Food for Thought and Natural Health Radio, John. How do people take part in your seminars and courses that you run?
Well, if they'd like to get more information about what I'm doing, the best thing to do is to go to drdemartini.com. That's DrDemartini.com, drdemartini.com. Or go to my Facebook, and there's something on the website. It's an information portal, so they can get all kind of information, radio, television, newspaper, magazines, writings, anything to help them master their lives and heal. And the same thing for Facebook. But drdemartini.com is the easiest way to find out where I am in the world, where I'm speaking, and all the things we're doing.
And John's currently in London doing seminars and workshops. So it's been our absolute pleasure today, John.
No, thank you for your lovely questions and for knowing how important is the mind-body relationship, and how gratitude and love is still the greatest of all healers.
I'm blessed. Thank you.
Thank you.